Welcome back on Dynamod. Today I want to propose you a video about
a series of video about the 9th edition for Warhammer 40k released by the Games Workshop. So in the description you can find also the playlist where you can find all the videos related about the core rules and advanced rules related about this edition. So now we can start to see all the rules that we have to know. So, and after the psychic phase, we have the shooting phase. In this case, we have to select one unit of yours and one unit of the opponent to shoot to. Remember that when you choose one of your units, you can decide which model will shoot to which unit. So you can, for example, choose that this one shoot to this one and the other ones shoot all to the other unit. So you can decide how you can divert for each model its weapons. So if the model is able to use more weapons, it will be able to split, but all the hits of each weapon has to go to the same unit. So if it has, for example, two weapons, one has to go to this one if it decide all the hit of that weapon, and the other one you can choose. You can declare that it go again to this or to go to the other one. So pay attention that you have to decide how to target the units. Obviously you have to see them, because for example if this unit is out of sight you can't target it. So not being able to target, you're not able to make the hitting on that unit. How you determine how to target unit? If a model of this one can see the unit, you can target with all the models in that unit that has a range enough to be able to reach that unit. For example, if this has a range of 3 inch, it's invented now. Now the 3 inch will not be able to reach, so they will not able to fire. So this is quite important to understand that okay, you have to see you can fire with all the models in that unit if at least one of your models is able to see the opponent unit, but you have to be able to reach that unit with that model by shooting to be able to damage it. So for example, if we had this situation, we can shoot to this unit with all the model, but if some model of this unit is not able to reach because the range is not enough, they can't shoot to this unit even if it's visible. So remember about such thing. One more thing to remember is that when the unit has more than one weapon, it has to fire all the same weapons at the same time. So you have to resolve all those attacks together. So for example, if we decide that we'll go to fire with this, with 4 models with the rifle and this with the grenade, we can decide to solve first the rifle or first the grenade. We make see that, for example, we decide to solve the rifles. So we use the rifles attacks and we solve all of this together. Then we solve the grenade attack. Remember that choosing the targets for the same unit has to be done before to resolve the attacks. So you can't decide that before you decide to throw these ones and then decide where this grenade attack will go. So remember that there is such one. So you have to decide before the targets of the attacks, and then you can solve. But the same weapons attacks has to be resolved. The attacks with weapons that has the same profiles has to be solved together. So remember that there is such important thing to remember. And in the case that the units are in close combat, remember that you can't shoot. For example, these ones, neither of such units can shoot to the other one or outside the combat, because there is a problem. They are in close combat. There is anyway one exception. So for example, this one that has the pistol, but we see the rules specific one, they can shoot in close combat, but only with the unit that are in close combat with. So remember that there is a such thing. Moreover, remember that the units that are outside the combat, so the units that are not engaged, they can't shoot to units that are in close combat because they risk to damage their own companions. So in this case, there is such limitations. There is another exception about being able to fire in close combat in engagement range, and it's about vehicles and monsters. In this case, they can shoot to engage units even if there are other friendly units in the same engagement. So remember that there is such exception. Anyway, they can't shoot to units that are outside of the engagement if that unit is engaged. And there is another thing to remember, is that if there are the shooting of the heavy weapons, in this case there are not, but it's an example, in that case that shooting suffer a penalty of 1 to hit to roll. The other type of shooting, the other type of weapons, doesn't suffer any penalty. So it becomes really quite interesting, because it means that assaulting really like beasts, like a raider, like a repulse or so on, it means that you are not safe. You can prevent that it shoot to other units, but you risk that it shoot out you, because it has all its weapon power at disposal. And there is also a way to save your characters. In fact, if the character itself has 9 or less wounds, if it is within 3 inches of a vehicle or monster friendly ones, obviously, or within 3 inches of a friendly unit of 3 or more models, in that case the character can't be targeted by weapons of enemy units. So remember that there is such one. Obviously there are exceptions, but generally talking, you can't target those models, so they are quite safe, other than if the model is the closest. In that case, that model can be targeted by the opponent units. So pay attention how you dispose and move the units, and how the opponent can move those units that has, because they can be make that they are in the range of your character. We have 5 different main weapons, type of weapons that we can select. The first is the assault weapons. This has the particularity that even if the unit make the model advance, then you can fire. I want to remind you that the only exception usually is the Titanic. In this case, you can advance and shoot with a penalty of 1 to shoot. The next one is about the heavy weapons. In that case, they suffer a penalty when they move. If they stand still, so they don't move during the movement phase, it's not a problem and they don't suffer such penalty. The next one is about the rapid fire. In this case, the models has a double amount of hitting with the profile. So for example, if this has rapid fire 1 and they are within half the range of the weapon profile, in that case they double the amount. So if for example this one has a range of 24 inch, if the enemy model is within 12 inch, the unit, the models that are within 12 inch of such ones can fire double hit. So it means that if you have 2 models that are within 12 inch of the enemy opponent, you can fire with two models double the hit, so 2 hit each model. The other ones that are outside of that range, of that half range, can fire normally as usually. So remember that there is such situation. About Marines, I want to remember that they work a bit different, but there are the rules in that codex. Then we have the grenades that are usually on the models. So we have here that we can see the different grenades. In that case, the grenades can be only fired 1 for each unit. So you decide to sacrifice the shooting of one of these models weapon, and it can shoot. Usually the grenade has the option that it has more strength or so on, or it has a sort of area, so it can make more hits. So pay attention to such one, and in that case you have to decide. Then we have the pistols. The pistol we have seen before that are a bit different from usually, so they can be used to fire in close combat. The other option is that you can fire pistols only with other pistols, because you could have a model with double pistols eventually. but if you fire with the pistol, you can't use other weapons on the same model. Then we have a special type of attack for the shooting type of weapons. It's not related to a specific type of weapons, so you can have different type of weapons that has this rule, and it's blast weapons. We can take, for example, the example about the grenades, that it's a blast weapon. In that case, you have D6 attacks that are available, but if the opponent unit has 6 to 10 models, these attacks that you generate, it will be a minimum of 3. So if you roll a dice and you obtain 1 or 2, anyway it will be 3 minimum 1. So remember such one. Instead, if the opponent unit has 11 or more attacks, you'll generate automatically the maximum amount of attacks of that blast weapon. It means that if the grenade has 6, as D6 as maximum attacks, it will be generated automatically 6 attacks. If it's more, because the amount of random attacks and so on can generate are more, you generate the maximum amount for that weapon. So quite pay attention. Imagine the whirlwind that has 2d6 attacks, it becomes really quite amazing. But there is some limitation, and it's that blast weapons can't be used within engagement range, even if the model that has it's a vehicle that I want to remember you, it can shoot within engagement, and there are pistols. So even in that case, you can't use, even if there are vehicles or pistols. So remember that this can't be done with this limitation. So it's anyway a nice way, because you can really gain a lot from this type of weapons that are the blast weapons. So I suggest you to take note, because there are units that can gain quite a lot based on such rule, and you can target massive units with really great pressure. So you have to pay particular attention to the shooting phase, because you have to understand that the units, main part of the units, has a different role based on the different type of weapons that they have. So for example, if you are going to use the heavy weapons, you know that if you move, you risk to lose a lot of ways to hit. If you are going to move the rapid fire weapons in close range, you have some gains, but you are approaching to the enemy, so you are almost in the charge rate sometimes. So you have to pay attention how to utilize, because for example the Assad Weapons are the best to go to conquer the objective, because you can run and still shoot. So there are a lot of different ways to use them, and you can decide to use different units with some set of weapons, because a lot of models can have different set of weapons, in the way that it suits you, it suits your strategy that you are going to think. So remember that you have to pay attention to such details, because they are really quite important to understand how you want to develop your own army. Anyway, from Dino Mode it's everything. I invite you to put a like on this video, to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell, and to comment this video if you are interested in something about this video, or you want to suggest me some arguments for other videos. I hope to see you again. To the next time.